Welcome to TradingNBI.com. This is John's Reports for November the 15th. Right in line with our expectations here, we were talking about how when the steel moved above negative 13.5, you can see the turnaround. In fact, I did that yesterday. We were also mentioning that it wasn't likely this was going to see much more of a move other than to fill back the positive extremes we had going back to, right here, which is close to where we hit from lows, just a fraction. The little tail was a little bit extra, but supported right off the ABM magenta. That rising gold and azure usually hold on to a move after just a slight decay. It didn't really matter either way because we were already still cyan under red, the DOC, which is still always a buy. We got to move back of green, midterm buyers back over. The shorts, there's just not a whole lot of short activity taking place at this particular stage, and that's been leading to very easy and comfortable rises. But when that white NBI gets crossed over by the red again, the same thing happened right back here in end of August, and that led to a new rise, which took a lot of days of not a whole lot of action, and then we led to that big drop. We'll see if that pattern continues. No guarantee that that's the course of action that it'll take, but just a possibility. So if we look at the NASDAQ, we see almost identical setup, same configuration crossover there. Of course, you've got to have NBI magenta move back above yellow, so any softness in there, it could delay that. And here on the NASDAQ, it was slightly different configuration because cyan moved just above red there, so a little bit less strength on the NASDAQ versus the S&P. When we look at gold here, slide that over so we can see GLD in the corner, and it's reaching its highs. So this is not a surprise that you see that with the cryptos, everything else we expected gold would eventually take off. It only keep it under wraps for so long. Of course, Bitcoin is doing their mini little fork. Again, just that one so that you can see the euro symbol in there. Euro. And that's just because, there's additional talk of more lockdowns and continued breakout cases within European communities. So no shock with any of that. And they're going to continue to do things the same way they did before and expect a different result. The definition of insanity, which is authoritarian by nature. That's what they love. And from a bond standpoint, now we can expect that if this breaks below that 50, that we're going to move back to the 0 and lower. And that would indicate higher rates, which this is something that's really interesting to me because as soon as it's believed that the Fed has lost control over whether or not rates rise or not, independent of what they want, that's a scenario that would unhinge things dramatically, because at this particular stage, and actually for the last decade, we've always said you don't fight the Fed. It's sort of an axiom of life because they have unlimited funds. From that Bitcoin standpoint, so after reaching that beautiful double top, I mean, it was a gorgeous double top peak right there, and boom, continued dip there in these additional spikes of white, suggesting move to the 0%, which is exactly what happened. And pop back up, and again, we're back to this exact same 64. I've had this on here for how long? Forever, since we reached it. And it just keeps trading right back around that area. Coming off, though, the deep shakeout move here, potentially getting towards positive, could be enough to give it the strength to push back above there. So it just depends. This is why I was also pointing out on the Skype chat that too, I put up the tick chart, simply because when you see a tick chart, as opposed to a 60 minute, it's going to have the exact same number of bars in a 24 period. But with a tick chart, you see that on down days, we end up with a lot more volume, and on the up days, much smaller. And again, that's reference to the fact that every time that we've done these reports, and that the short side of the equation when it comes to cryptos is always made more than the long side. Speaking of long side, the Karma Opus 2T took the long setups from there. It's currently in that, and it's already at its equity highs. performance report here and take a look at. Here's the performance report on that, at least from a graph standpoint. So little dots indicate new equity highs, and that's what it's doing. Still nearly a 4, almost 60% win rate from a long side transaction, nearly 50-50. But again, like I always say, the big deal is the winning trade value versus a losing trade being almost 3-to-1 and 2-to-1 on the short side. So that's what makes it very profitable. Still 65% relative time in the market, pretty good, and a 443 on the RINA, which is just a measure of how much time in the market versus risk. So quite nice. The higher that number is, the better. All good from that standpoint. From a 5K standpoint, right at the edge here. So we've been talking about the weak volume days and how most of them have been where we have the day marker, which is the dark blue line that I have it marked as, fitting in one chart. This almost didn't fit into a chart. It got pretty slow as we got a little back and forth, and then boom, we finally hit a bid, and once that turned green, we shot up to the highs. And then every time we were getting the little signals, it was enough to give it a little bit of soft play, but it kept turning around. Every time you met the white magenta here, the rejection, you knew that was going to start to rise. And that was right off the previous algo level from before. The one over here, it had met, and that's why it stayed weak a little bit longer until the magenta crossed over right, it literally happened right there, right immediately on the turnaround. And even if you wanted to give it another bar or two, once the steel crossed above orange and orange dipped below 7.5, to me that's time to say adios to it and flip over and be ready for the push to the upside. That's exactly what happened. So all in all, good stuff. As always though, I will keep updating you. I've been actually working with the program now for the dot setup to adjust these. It's just trying to get the language to mix with the previous coding. It's complicated, but we're going to get there. As always though, we'll talk later. I'll be on the Skype chat. Have a good one.